Hi, everybody. It's great to see everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tom Bridge. I'm the co-chair of the Mac and Mins Foundation, and I'm with friends.
Hi, I'm Chris Dawe. I'm the board secretary.
And I'm Becky Scott. I am a member at large.
Yes, and we're here to give a bit of a State of the Union to the Mac and Mins Foundation, talk about what's been going on since last we talked to you, as well as what's going on in the future, because I think that's a big, important thing. So we've got some news and some changes within the organization, as well as a quick conversation about major projects that have been ongoing, and some that are brand new, and some that are coming. We also want to have a good conversation about operational maturity, which is one of those big, like, IT style words for, hey, we want to get better at this stuff. And that usually means that, what we're doing here is kind of kicking things off. So I'm plugging in my laptop because it started to go to sleep as I was sitting here. So we'll see if this maybe helps us stay awake on the screen.
How about that all-day battery life, huh?
Well, I mean, the all-day battery life isn't what I worry about. It's the display dimming, and then I can't see my own slides as we present. So I was going to say, now we're plugged in, now everything is good. But we've got a lot to talk about today with regards to a new program for the Mac and Mins Foundation, which is the mentorship program, and our community and conference grants program, which is ongoing this year. We have 4 scholars here. Brenda's in the back. Say hello, everybody. Say hi to Brenda. I was going to say, who else, do we have anybody else from the scholarship program in the room who got a scholarship to be here today?
I don't see anyone.
I don't see anybody else. I don't see Manasa or
Garrett or Henry.
Yes, Garrett or Henry. But we have 4 scholars you may have met this week and who are new to the community and who are new to conferences. It's our goal to get people here and in these rooms, because this is where we see a lot of impact made for the community long term. And then, we're going to talk a little bit about growth and opportunity for the organization, and then, of course, a big message about our finances, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the future. So from there, we have some special messages.
Oh, should I go on this one?
Yes,
Yeah,
I was
sure.
going to say, I think you said, I dove in to start us, and then...
Very good.
All right.
So this year we had a number of board member retirements. We had a number of people leave the board for a variety of reasons. Rich Troughton is in the room. Kindly agreed to stay on as an advisor emeritus. Sabrina Coy, Jennifer Unger, and Emily Kauslik all moved on for various reasons. We are extremely heartbroken to see them go. They've all done wonderful work, and in some cases continue to do wonderful work on the foundation's behalf. And that led us to, at the beginning of the year, a whole interview and selection process for new board members. We added Becky Scott from Jump Cloud, John Malman, who is currently at Leidos, Rebecca Latimer from Thumbtack, and Colin Elliott, whose new employer I've forgotten.
Capital One.
Capital One. And they've all jumped in and started helping us work on project stuff. They're doing terrific work on some very detail-oriented projects that we're going to talk about that are helping us become an organization that actually both gets things done and knows how to get things done and doesn't have to learn anew each time. So in terms of where we've been over the last couple of years, this slide was in our deck last year. We are preparing to pay for the last year of our Slack contract. The bill that's coming due at the end of this month is going to be for $56,000 and change, which, if I recall correctly, is based on an average monthly active user count in the range of 6,000, 6,500 users. And I want you to keep that number in mind for later when we talk about the future. I know.
Yeah, when it comes to working with our friends at Slack, the licensing arrangements for larger organizations, especially larger nonprofits, is a lot like Whose Line Is It Anyway? The points are made up and the rules don't matter.
Yeah.
Which is to say it's an agreed upon arrangement, and we certainly appreciate our partnership with our friends at Slack, and we'll look forward to future negotiations.
Over the course of the last year, we've done a fair amount of participation in community conferences. We sponsored the 2023 Mac Admins Conference here at Penn State. We are a sponsor again this year. This year, we took on our first sponsorship for MacAduck and the United Kingdom. We have continued to support the Mac Admins open source efforts to maintain open source software published by Mac Admins in a central location, I think, primarily because it all needs to be signed now. And
Correct.
That's something that an institution has to do, and it's something that an institution in some ways has to pay for. In terms of key initiatives this year, Tom is going to come up and talk about the mentorship program because I think that's the newest and most exciting thing. I'm also going to talk about the State of the Community Conference Grants and Scholarships program that we're using to send folks to conferences, and some interesting wrinkles that we've run into with that particular program that will both impress and appall you, leading to some of our discussions of operational maturity issues, processes, and procedures, and then we're going to talk about finances and fundraising efforts at the end. So, Tom, mentorship.
All right. So we are really excited. I want to say a huge thank you to the community from our leads on the mentorship program. That's Laura Anthony from Apple, Graham Gilbert from Airbnb, and Gerard Massey from the Mac Admins Foundation Board. We are really excited. We are mid-launch, yay, for our mentorship programs here at the Mac Admins Foundation. And of course, I have to go to the seminal prophets of the world, and I'm talking about Elwood and Jake Blues from the Blues Brothers, because everybody needs something to work for, and everybody's got something that they can teach everybody. And so when I say that, I mean you, me, them, everybody. And so, from that perspective, we're here to talk a little bit about, the mentorship program and the mentorship model. And we have to start from a perspective of talking about what's the value of mentorship and why is this a community value that we should all share and participate in together. And really what it comes down to is pairing experienced community members with newer community members. I will not do this job forever. Becky won't do this job forever. Christoph might do this job forever, but he probably does not want to. It's our goal here to make sure that the people behind us have the skills that they need to rise into our positions, and the people that follow them can rise into theirs, because we all do this together. It's also really important to provide opportunities for networking, learning, skilling each other up, and doing that in a collaborative model, because none of us is as smart as all of us, is a really, really important part of this foundation's goals for making a broader Mac Admins community. In addition, it's helpful to build a recurring cycle of knowledge sharing and engagement. Building that recurring cycle makes it a muscle, and we train that muscle in terms of building up strength in new spaces, going through the process of learning how to teach each other things and learning how to, I don't know about you guys, but I learn best when I have to learn something to teach someone else. That is how I write my talks. I pick a topic and I'm like, okay, time to learn everything there is to know about that particular talk and topic so that I can turn it into a talk like I gave yesterday or that I gave last year on Software Update. It's our job here as a community to make sure that we have that kind of knowledge sharing and experience, not just for the people learning, but for the people they're teaching to. So how's the program gonna work? Because I think that's a super important topic for us to share so that folks can understand that. I, of course, immediately went to a phase diagram that I'm very familiar with because working with engineers. I'm going to talk a little bit about the directionality of all of these things, and we're going to talk about this from the perspective of there's a mentor, there's a mentee, there's a math committee, which is to say the people who are kind of organizing the program. So mentors are going to apply. You're going to tell us what you want to talk about. You're going to tell us what skills you have, maybe where you work, what you do, how long you've been in the community. These are all things that we want to know about you, the mentor. We also want to know that about mentees, because we just want to know, hey, what do you want to learn? What are you here for? Where do you work now? What do you do? What do you want to do when you grow up? Because I'm still figuring that out. After that, there's going to be an acceptance for a mentee and a mentor. And we're going to pick people, we're going to do our best to fill that program and keep it going. We're starting with a pilot so that we can learn and iterate. That pilot's going to be somewhere between 20 and 50 people on the mentor side and on the mentee side. We will have slightly more mentees than mentors because we may ask mentors to carry more than one mentee. After that, we're going to do something a little bit different than a lot of other programs. We are actually going to let the mentees pick their mentors. We're going to give you the opportunity, we're going to give you a list of topics that you might want to learn about, we're going to give you a list of people to pick from, and we're going to set up initial sessions. Those initial sessions are going to be hi there, how there, get to know each other a little bit, get to know what your goals are, get to know what your experience level is, and then we can work on periodic sessions that go after that. We're going to keep the program, the pilot, open for 10 to 12 weeks after the program begins. Once the program is complete, your mentorship is not done. You can continue to work with your mentor as long as you care to, as long as that's valuable to you both. But then what we want is your feedback. We want to learn from that experience. What worked well? What didn't work so good? Because those are the things that we have to know as program organizers, and we really want to have people join the pilot who are going to commit to doing not just the mentorship and the mentee and the learning, but also to committing feedback to the program so that we can learn and grow together. That during that mentorship cycle, there's going to be periodic check-ins with your mentor and periodic group sessions so that we can get everybody together to kind of say, hey, how's it going? Open up some Zoom calls and open up the floor and talk about how things are going. Give ourselves some opportunities to share knowledge, share learnings, share technique, and share pedagogy around those kind of things. So the program is starting now. The pilot will run through September. There will be a learning period to follow where we might make adjustments to the program and then open it up again in the fall. The spring for Marcus. Yep, I'm here for that. I have to remember hemispheriality is not a good thing to get used to, so we should talk about months and not seasons. So again, we're aiming for up to 40 mentees and up to 50 mentors in the program, and there's still room. So what do we need from the community? We need a little bit of your time. We need your trust in that we can make this a good and healthy place for us to operate. We're taking people from all experience and knowledge levels. I'm going to say that again. Don't think that you can't be a mentee if you have a fair amount of experience in the community. You absolutely can, especially people who are adjusting to new careers, adjusting to new paths. Are you moving into management for the first time? That's a great time to be somebody's mentee, even if you've got 20 years of experience in the field, right? In addition, we're taking mentors of all skill levels and experiences. Everybody's got something to give, and everybody's got something they can teach. Everybody in this room. Mentorship is also about growth. It's not about magic skills. It's not about I'm going to suddenly be the most highly ranked expert in some topic. I might want to learn something new. You might want to learn about Wi-Fi from Chris. You might want to learn about community management from Becky. You might want to learn about product management from me. These are all things that the community can help grow and experience together. So we're here to give each other a hand up. We're here to empower the next generation of Mac admins. We're here to empower the next generation of leaders of Mac admins. We're here to build community and to do that from an authentic and honest perspective. So this is a big question we get asked a lot. Well, who's ready for this? What do I have to be in order to be a mentor? You can't be I can't be a mentor. I'm not like a superhero like you. That's not what we're here. No one here is a superhero, but you're good at something. You know that you're good at something. And that's something you can share. You could say, but Tom, I'm not a master at this technology thing yet. I can't be a mentor. If mastery was the only qualification, we'd say so, and it's not. What we're looking for is people who are willing to share their knowledge and perspective, people who are willing to share their experience, and to help people learn and benefit for the future. So I'm going to throw a QR code up on here on the phone. Feel free to share. We're also going to share these slides later. This is a place, I should stand out of the way of the QR code, otherwise scanning it kind of doesn't work so good, although it's pretty lossy, so I think we should be okay. But the whole thing here is we want people to join this program. We want people to tell their friends and together, we can build that future that's going to get us to a better community, a stronger technological practice between all of us, and it's going to help us grow for the future. So come join Building the Future. Come talk about mentorship. And with that, Chris, I'll turn it to you for community and conference grants.
Okay, thank you. So we launched our community and conference grants program in whatever last year was. That was 2023, right?
I do so believe.
Yeah, I think this is 2024. And we launched the community and conference grants programs with two components. Last year, the folks at Macaduck were kind enough to give us a couple of tickets to give away. And we took applications for those tickets and issued those tickets and sort of made it up to the folks who received the tickets, were awarded those grants to find their way to Macaduck. Last year when we moved on to Penn State, we took on a little bit more of an ambitious strategy. What we decided that we wanted to do, and what we decided that the community conference and grant program is really about, is bringing early career professionals to a conference if they might not otherwise afford to be able to, if they might not have the resources, if they might not be able to get institutional support. And so what we did was we worked with Penn State to allocate a certain number of tickets to the program based on our sponsorship for the conference, and then we created a series of block grants for which we took applications. Applications were done entirely online via a series of questionnaires that the committee responsible for scholarships and grants then evaluated and graded, and we provided $2,500 unrestricted grants to each recipient to use as they saw fit in order to further the attendance to the conference. And so we awarded 5 of those last year. This year, we upped our numbers. We created a couple of block grants for Macaduck, and we started to look at increasing the number of block grants for Penn State. And this year was when things started to get interesting. The executive committee for the MacAdmins Foundation traveled to the UK, and I should go ahead and actually, I'm going to take a second and recognize that for this year, we were able to get 3 of our 4 grantees together for a photo, and this is them with us earlier this week. But kind of coming back to where I was going before I digressed, the executive team from the MacAdmins board, our MacAdmins Foundation board, traveled to Macaduck to participate in the conference as a sponsor and to continue establishing contacts in the community, both with potential sponsors and just membership in the community. And we had awarded 2 grants for Macaduck, and we realized while we were at Macaduck that only one of our awardees showed up. And that led to a series of questions around that particular grantee. When was their Slack account created? Their Slack account was created 2 or 3 days after we announced the existence of the program for Macaduck. What does their LinkedIn profile look like? Not a lot. Very vague, very generic. If you start to dig through on the Googles and the Facebooks and the other socials, do you find much record of this person's existence? As it turns out, no, not really. And are they responding to follow-up requests with respect to questions about their attendance, with respect to questions about the award? And so, you know, one of the things, what happened here? Fraud came to the foundation, we think. We don't know because this person has never returned calls since. Yep. And we did award that grant and we did send that money. And the executive team was at Macaduck, and we thought to ourselves, we are in the middle of deciding which grants to award for Penn State. And we're down to a number of candidates. Let's look at all of those candidates. And guess what? Exact same trend, exact same issue.
Multiple applications.
Yeah. Yeah, and the exact same pattern shown here. I think one thing that I don't mention in this particular Slack is, in addition to the Slack account creation date, a couple of days after the announcement of the grants, also no Slack activity at all.
Yeah.
Registered account, first login, no posts, no conversations, at least in public channels that any Slack user can search. So, while sitting at NACADUC, operating on very little sleep, the executive team worked together to create an ad hoc set of verifications for the existing applicants and filtered through the applicants we had and awarded 4 grants this year. That looks like a question. Oh, Catchbox.
No, it's okay. You can repeat it. Keep that list of things you checked secret.
Correct.
Okay.
I was going to say, there are things that we are going to pay attention to,
Yeah.
and I think that the verification process now is much more about people.
Yeah, and I think that I wouldn't go so far as, I mean, at this point, hard to keep this set of things secret because I just talked about it in public. But the resulting actions and processes that came out of this were a set of processes and procedures to further validate the applicants, both in terms of, if it comes right down to it, government paperwork. Mm-hmm. There are tax forms that have to be dealt with, but we are now making those the awards contingent on the completion of those tax forms and not allowing that to be done later. We are now performing in-person interviews, at least via video, with the applicants, and we can see potential vulnerabilities around that. And we're putting other measures in place to try to set up those tripwires to say, we don't want this to happen again. And it's for me, and this is where I kind of get on my soapbox, because I have a soapbox about rules and bureaucracy and processes and procedures and the regulatory state and this, that. I mean, I have an American history degree, so these are things that interest me. This is the kind of place where that comes from. Not allowing this to happen again. And so we're moving to a trust but verify system, which means that the application and award process is going to be significantly more stringent.
And it's going to take longer. So that means we're probably going to be announcing early for next year and for other events that we will have community focus for.
Yep, and that leads kind of to the operational maturity topic. This trends into that.
I'm curious, do you have to participate in every single thing? Like, I'm not a big Slack person, but I mean, does that rule someone out? Or
So I appreciate.
I've had an account for a number of years, but I read but don't.
Having an account for multiple years would essentially say this is a longstanding member of the community. Otherwise, in those particular cases, you would have had to have planned 3 or 4 years ago for a program you didn't know existed. We totally hear you, and we don't want to make active participation on the Slack the only thing we look at. In fact, it won't be. Because that's not a full indication of what it takes to be a member of this community. Right. What it takes is, it's more of a combination of human factors, right? And what we are trying to make sure is that the scholarship's going to someone who is actually a member of the community and not someone who's showing up for a block grant. And so those are the kind of things that we have to think about, because we had a good conversation initially, like, well, how does this change the program? Should we make it so that you have to submit receipts afterward and we fulfill your receipts? How does that affect somebody who can't afford the airline ticket to come here? How does that affect somebody who wants to use part of the grant to pay for childcare? How does that affect, to do those things that they may have to pay up front for and that we'd have to post-date values for?
Yeah, we're really looking to provide access in as low a friction a way as possible.
Correct.
To things like conferences, because conferences and attendance at conferences is, for better or worse, a bit of a privileged position. The fact that you are at a conference means that you are part of a privileged audience and you are part of a subset of the IT community that may or may have more advantages than others. And so we're really trying to build a program and maintain a program that says, we want this to be as easy as possible and as low friction as possible for you, the recipient. But it also means that frankly, we left ourselves a little bit vulnerable to something, and the idea that someone was going to come along to a new nonprofit and discover a block grant for a specific market vertical and apply for that in a fraudulent way, well, it makes perfect sense in retrospect.
Yep.
It was not high on my list of things we were considering, and now it is.
I was going to say, I think all of us went into this and tried to assume positive intent. And we still want to assume positive intent because otherwise we wouldn't be here. Otherwise the foundation wouldn't be here. Otherwise the Slack wouldn't be here. Otherwise we wouldn't have tried to do the legitimization of the Slack and just tried to skate by as long as we possibly could have. We want to make this a legitimate organization. We want to be optimistic about our future, but we also have to recognize we don't want to be a sucker either.
Yeah. And it really points us into a place where one of the things that we talk about a lot, and one of the things that gets talked a lot about in the nonprofit world in general, is how much of the funds you're raising are going to actual programs and how much of them are going to operations. And one of the things that I think that we had hoped for, and we have learned in some cases the hard way, is that spending more on operations and the type of infrastructure that, say, a real business needs becomes an absolute necessity. Having a lawyer, having accountants, having processes in place, so on and so forth. We pay for liability insurance for the board. These are all things that, we're going to get together and get people to donate money, and we're going to pay for the Slack, and we're not going to need any of that. Well, wrong.
Yeah.
Just wrong.
For the record, we have had liability insurance the entire time on the advice of counsel and our board advisors.
Yep.
So don't think that that's a new process. We knew up front that we were going to need legal services, and that was where a fair amount of our initial year's budget went to, was to get us an advisor, get us through those processes. But that's not the only thing that we've been working about to mature our organization.
Yeah,
But it has been well
a big
worth
part
it.
of this year, this is the flagship example, but a big part of this year has been about solving and addressing some of the challenges that we had as all of our individual board members got busier. All of our board members got, well, except for me, got more busy at work, had less time available. We found that a lot of the things we'd done in the first year or two of the organization were very improvisational, along the lines of, like, hey, let's get everybody together in a Slack channel and agree on when this month's meeting is for January. And then we got it scheduled for March. So as an example of operational maturity, this year I spent 2 days reviewing the holiday and civil and religious holiday calendars for several major religions, the United States, Canada, and the UK, and locked in a meeting schedule for 2 years. So our monthly board meetings are now scheduled, and we don't have to fight about that anymore. That's a baseline example of operational maturity, and it is so obvious that it took us 6 months to do it.
Took us 6 months to do it, and we did it for all the committees at approximately the same time. So now we don't have an overlapping block between all of our different committees, because you serve on 2 or 3 or 4 committees as a board member, because we've got a bunch of the board meetings are all about, like, the best way that I describe it is the board meetings are ratifications of action. The actual work is done in the committee meeting. And so the committees are actually doing the work together, and the board is all about recognizing that work, scoping the strategy for the organization for the long term, and that's where we need all 9 of us. It's much easier for us to do the work in groups of 3 or 4.
Yep. Second piece of this is starting to adopt more tools. I believe that on Tuesday,
yes,
we flipped on the account for our new CRM so that we could take donations and begin doing more work tracking donations, because as we see time pass, the community grow, the user base in Slack get bigger, we expect to see the bills go up and the requirement for money to grow. And one of the things that we found in the last year is that Google Sheets spreadsheet that we've been using to track things just hasn't been adequate for the information that we need to return and get new sponsors, or return and get sponsors to, re-up. Keep track of the requests that we're getting. Just like everything else, things get lost in the bottom of your inbox, and you discover them maybe a little bit later than you should have. And that iron is no longer as hot. We spend time building processes, talked about the process broadly for what our application and validation process is going to look like for community grants going forward. We're also building processes for our meetings and our decision making itself. One of the things that Andy Fife, our nonprofit consultant, is having to reiterate to us over and over and over again is that a board for a nonprofit does not operate the way that a business does. All of us, to one extent or another, are decision makers, managers. We're used to making snap decisions. We're used to not taking input. We're used to just moving because most of us operate either solo or as part of small teams. One of the things that the executive team has had to learn is that we're not C-levels in a for-profit company. We're not here necessarily to dictate decisions to the rest of the board. We're here to facilitate a conversation that results in a group decision. And coming from a technology background, that there are pieces of it that you use when you deal with management, you deal with customers, but it's also an extraordinarily alien point of view. We looked at Robert's Rules of Order for managing meetings, realized how long it was, and our consultant Andy provided us with a title for a slimmed down modern Rules of Order by Donald A. Tortoris from the legal community. We now use that to manage our meetings. And the meetings go much, much more smoothly.
I was going to say, for anybody who's doing community work, if you're on a committee publicly, if you're as part of a nonprofit, may I strongly suggest that you get a copy of the Modern Rules of Order, because it is substantially better than Robert's Rules in a number of ways, and it governs the spot that you're looking for. Brad, you ready?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to, can you repeat the name of the program you use for scheduling? Your meetings, organizing meetings?
We use a tool called When is Good. But the When is Good is great, but like it's only good for single-use meetings. And so if we need to do a one-off, we do it with When is Good. But in terms of building a calendar, Chris did the hard work and did that himself.
Oh, okay.
And so that was how we... Yeah, the tool was Chris, and Chris is excellent.
Yep.
I strongly recommend that everyone buy a Chris.
Phrasing.
Yes.
I don't know, Chris, are you for hire?
Talk to me in October.
Yeah.
So yeah, the resulting in a lot of trying to formalize what our processes look like, trying to formulate how we do work and make decisions, and the sort of formalization of we're going to do most of the work in the committee, and then we're going to bring the committee work to the larger board and vote on results in terms of a committee meeting result or a committee project result might be a budget request to implement this particular piece of software, implement a piece of CRM software, which then turns into, okay, we've got to take the next step on the process of evaluating these pieces of software as a group and then take a vote. And that is how we arrived at the CRM that we are using. Which,
for the record, if you haven't heard, is Bloomerang. If you may have gotten an email from us. We're going to be sending around the second round of receipts later today. We are a big, we looked at 3 different CRMs during our process. We had multiple rounds of interviews with folks. We had a lot of, clear, and it was almost like we had 9 people who had bought software before, and had could agree on a formal set of requirements and a process. It was actually really kind of nice, and then we actually had a really great sales experience with the Bloomerang folks. I've never had good experience buying enterprise software. I always kind of feel like it's shall we say it's not a great process generally? I see a lot of nodding heads. But I will give the Bloomerang folks all credit. And of course, it helped that they presented on a Mac every time. And the Neon One folks maybe didn't. But
also,
yeah.
we really had the best pre-sales rep that I've ever encountered.
Yes, correct. Kai, thank you.
Was deserves their own shout out. Was a fantastic experience. Great follow up. If anybody's running a nonprofit, we can tell you who to talk to about this.
And if you came by the booth and you donated, thank you, and you saw me using it on my phone and it was awesome.
Yeah.
Sponsored content.
I was going to say, this is a little bit of SpawnCon. I was going to say, we'll give the SpawnCon shout out here, but I was going to say they've got great tools for us in the community. And that was the really important part of how we ended up selecting them.
Yep, and more of these operational maturity topics have included things like policies and documentation for things that we hadn't been documenting before. One great example is that we have been participating in conferences, but we have been participating in conferences with different groups of people building the project. And this year we started taking that and building it into a set of checklists, which would, IT, documentation, instructions, surprising. Maybe we should do this. Here we are. And then finally, in terms of operational maturity, we did adopt a CRM in order to start moving towards an improved fundraising process that'll work on at least a couple of different levels. And that brings us to the topic of finances, where we are money-wise. This is what we have in the bank.
This is what we have in the bank today.
The bottom number in this screenshot is the Slack bill due on July 29th, I believe?
Yes,
is that what it says
is
up there?
slightly smaller. They forgot to apply our sales tax exemption, so it will be the $56,000 a month. Can you go back 2 slides real quick? No, I'm sorry, no, a year.
Per year.
If anyone wanted to take a picture and settle our invoice for us, we would be happy to talk with you about appropriate recommendation after the fact, or a recognition after the fact. You know, that's account number 903-1296. You can just drop in the whole amount. It'll be totally cool. Thank you. We appreciate your support. No, I'm just kidding.
Tom. So yeah. So we have an invoice in this amount to pay July 29th. It's the last year of our existing contract. After we pay that, that's what we're going to have in the bank. And we are going to have a new contract to negotiate with Slack. And
They don't alter the deal or any further.
Well, we have to talk about that.
we have to talk about that because when we originally contracted with Slack, we were in the neighborhood of 38,000 active accounts. This is where we are as of today. Thinking about this in terms of the number we think that they use to calculate licensing costs, that is the active monthlies. At the time of the original contract, we were in the range of 6,000 to 60, or at least the number for this year was estimated at 6,000 to 6,500, and to calculate the invoice that we will pay at the end of the month, we're currently scraping this right now. And so numbers go up, line go up. Is that the phrase we keep
Line
using?
go up.
Line go up.
Line go up.
Money printer go burr, for Slack at least. And that brings us to the topic of fundraising in general. And I'm going to turn this over to Tom and Becky to talk about fundraising specifically and talk about programs that are coming. But one of the things that we want you to be aware of is that we are asking for money for a very good reason. This community has grown a lot. The Slack has grown an immense amount. We expect the bill to be larger by a significant amount for the bill that we will presumably pay on July 29th, 2025. And so to talk about what that does to our fundraising, I'm going to turn that all over to you all.
All right, so fundraising. So coming later this year, we are going to talk about individual membership. Now, I want to emphasize that we are not going to charge for the Slack instance. Like, there is not going to be a membership fee to be involved in Slack. We are going to work very hard to make sure that remains free. Okay, so that's the preface of this. But we have been having conversations with people about people that already donate monthly. There are some people that do that. Oh, of course. My phone going off right in the middle of this, of course. This is really about the community and helping you all stay connected and being a part of this group. And so we are looking at people that already donate, people that are going to donate, and we have some people who are already giving us money monthly. And some of them have said, hey, we want something, kind of a recognition or some extra access or some privilege. So we are floating this as a pilot program, okay? Something to recognize people who are already helping us and maybe incentivize other people to donate a little bit monthly.
And as you take pictures, let me jump in and say, all of this is subject to change. This is draft material.
This is a pilot. This is something that we are actually going to ask for your input on, okay? So this is something new, and I know it's an eye chart, but we are talking about this. We don't even have the money level, so don't worry about that. This is just, we are talking about people who contribute regularly every month. We are talking about a members only store and merchandise. So if you just even do $1 a month, you would have access to this special store. I know it says members only. I don't think we'll have members only jackets, but who knows, maybe a patch.
I was going to say, I don't look good in a members only jacket. I'm just saying that out loud. But I think that, it's our goal here. We never plan to take down the bonfire store. We fully intend to keep the public store for everybody, so that if anybody wants to buy a Mac and Men's Foundation t-shirt or hat or notebook or anything of the items that we keep there, that's the intention. It's our intention to make new merchandise available through the members only store, as well as start to have more additional events for our larger donors who are on the individual program. So it's our goal here. In large part, we've had a very interesting learning experience starting to fundraise from corporations. And the experience that we have is that there's usually a lot of process. It's usually a very, very long lead time just to get a very basic amount of money, or a very straightforward process. And also, if they decide to change their mind and say, hey, look, we really appreciate what you're doing, but we can't continue our sponsorship, that's a very large hole in our budget. And so what we are trying to do, and based on our internal conversations, is that this has always been about the community. We'd like to ask the community for their help. Yeah. And so it's our intention to make this available to the broader community as a way to go forward.
Yeah, another thing that I would say about this is we have been, as you can see from our sponsor list on the website and in the thank you notes in the Slack that appear every month, we have been very successful in raising money from corporate sponsorships, but we also have always had, I guess I'd call it an ethos, that we never want to be beholden to one organization around how this thing is funded, how our and especially now that we have projects other than paying for the Slack. And I think one of the things that we realized in the last year is that it's easy to say, sure, we're not going to allow one company sufficient financial underwriting in order to give them the opportunity to, pull the rug out from under us. Right. But I think what that's developed into is the overall concept that corporate donations and corporate sponsorships by companies also cannot be the only source of funding to make this work, because macroeconomic conditions, changes in attitudes, changes in culture around whether companies want to donate, all affect our ability to raise money.
Yeah, and corporate budgets change, they shrink, they grow. But we want to emphasize that we're not going to pressure anyone, and if someone cannot afford to donate, that is okay. All right?
Correct.
It is never going to be something that you have to do. If someone can't do it, that's all right. And if someone can pay extra for friends, that's great too. But we just want to remind everyone, this is not a pressure on anyone. That's extremely important. Do we want to take the question now?
Yeah.
Oh, you can toss.
I'll toss. You still had a question?
It was, yes, kind of. So up to this point, you've never had any corporate sponsor attempt to exert any influence over the Slack, and that's going to be a continued policy.
They have never attempted to. We will never allow them.
No.
Right,
Yeah.
and I think that's also like part of the reason you probably want to have individual donors is that so that never becomes an issue.
Correct.
If a corporate sponsor says, we'll drop out unless you delete content that we don't like or that people criticizing us too
I
much.
mean, they're welcome to say that, and they're welcome to drop out, but it's not going to change our policy.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
And
And plus,
it's-
this is a
it's-
long-term sustainability thing, you
Correct.
know, by having the individual contributors doing recurring donations.
Yeah, it's
Several organizations that have matching donation plans often do
Yes.
a double, triple, blah, blah, blah match at a certain
Yes.
time of the year. Have
Yes.
you considered, instead of monthly contributions, just an annual contribution on behalf?
That is something that we are working on, and we are evaluating whether our tool currently supports it. We have been in concert with a conversation with them about what that's going to look like, and that's part of our process now. So that is where we're headed. Or
There's a question there on the left.
yeah, I was going to say back there too.
Well, quick question. When does your fiscal year end?
We run on the calendar year, so we are a January to December organization. We didn't do something funny and try July.
I'm just, have you had the conversation about whether than Slack?
So the question was, have we had the conversation about a different tool other than Slack? Yes, there are other tools. Obviously, we recognize that the Slack is not where we intend to stay literally forever, because other tools will happen, right? Like there might be a new tool in 3 years that makes Slack look like yesterday's business, and we all move over there. We are here to support the community where they are. Today, the community is in Slack. And I will say that I've used some other solutions with other groups to maintain a community, and there are, yep, that is another product that is available in the market. I'm not using the D word here, and I won't. So,
Yeah. But where does everybody hang out in their daily work life? Majority of them are in Slack, and it's easier to meet people where they are. So that's what we're doing.
yep, we're meeting the community where they are. And so today, that's where they are. If we need to undertake a migration at some point, we will undertake a migration at some point.
And to not to put too fine a point on it, but something that involved undertaking a migration to a new platform would have to be at least partly driven by the community desire to go there.
Correct.
You know, we're not going to try to shove anyone into some kind of oddball, format based on LinkedIn or something like that, like a few vendors that I could name.
Speaking from experience of various size groups, when you change the location, physical, online, whatever,
Yep.
you lose 10 to 40% of the people.
You are
Period.
exactly right.
Yeah.
And that is why.
Even if it's terrible to much better.
Yep. And that's the inertia that we face. And that is why, and I think Slack knows that, and that certainly works in their favor at contract negotiation time. But, we will continue to fight for the community and for our group. That's right.
We'll fight. One thing we wanted to point out is this green spot here, the power contributor. That's kind of where we would ideally like to see people. Again, no numbers are here, but this is kind of like our ideal spot, because we want to get people there and get them into a voucher for an item, probably like a t-shirt or something, and public recognition. And this is kind of where this is going to be our sweet spot, whatever that winds up being.
Yep. And yeah, I was gonna say that's exactly right. It's the best value kind of situation. And honestly, we're kind of thinking about it in the perspective of, making sure that you're covering your costs for participating in the community. That's where we start to think about that.
And I think we've talked about having, input from people. So when we get to that point, if you want to be a part of that, we will, say, hey, who
Yep.
wants to be a part of a working group to help us form this and make it better? Then
Definitely come
let
talk
us
to
know.
us after.
Mhm.
Yeah. And we'll also be posting information about this in the Mac Admins Foundation channel. We're not going to make you
Correct.
hunt us down.
Yep. And I really want to talk about why this is important. And, I think that as we think about a membership program is all about making this for and by the members. That's really what this comes down to at the end of the day. Bradley brought up an important point, which is to say it is very possible that a sponsor might come to us and say, hey, this comment isn't, we think it violates the code of conduct even when it doesn't. You need to pull this down, or we're going to leave. And our answer to that is, if it truly does not, violate the code of conduct, if it's truly a defensible comment, and they're willing to leave over it, thank you. It's been fun working with you. We'd like to let you go.
Yeah, and if I may, Tom, just for a second on
Sure.
this, this is a place to raise the distinction that we've made between the Mac Admins Foundation and the Mac Admins Slack admin team, which are separate entities. One of the things that we get asked a lot is, how much do we participate in mediating disputes or fielding complaints? Typically what we do with something like a complaint is refer it to the admins, because the way that things are currently constituted, the admin team is responsible for maintaining the code of conduct and enforcing the code of conduct. There's certainly input that we have in these conversations, but it is not controlling input. And so one of the things that I like to try to emphasize is the independence of the foundation, but also the independence of the admins team with respect to acting on behalf of the community to decide how the community should be administered and governed.
Yep. And, our admins have a really difficult job, and they don't get paid. They are volunteers, and they are from the community, and they administer the Slack on a day-to-day basis. We have people on, I think, 4 continents now. And across all of the time zones. Although I think right now with Nindy and Marcus both here, poor Oceania can't blow up.
We're gonna hose out ANZ back when we get back.
So yeah, I was going to say we want to make sure that our community is what's powering the moderation of the community, and that doesn't come with dictates from the board of the foundation. We're here to pay the bill. That's what we're here to do, is pay the bill and to provide input and leadership where it's necessary and where it is requested, not where we are not. So that's a super important part of this. So that's really why this comes down to this being important. And so what we need more than anything else is your support. You're here in this room. That's a great start. Maybe you'll join the mentorship program and help us with that process. You can refer people to the scholarship programs that we've talked about for next year. We really want more great candidates who are new in the field, who are new to these events, who are going to be the people that replace each and every one of you in your jobs at some point in the future. We are very, very interested in making sure that there are people behind you. We love and respect each and every one of you. We'd like you to be able to retire. We'd like for you to live a life of leisure. We'd like for you to win the lottery. And all of those things mean that you have someone who is ready to take your spot when the time comes. And that means working with to develop the next generation of people. That might be somebody you work with today or somebody you meet at this conference. That might be somebody from the Jobs Chat channel or the Jobs Board channel on the Mac Admin Slack, where people can get together and talk about employment needs and employment concerns. This is a rapidly evolving economy. It's a rapidly evolving world. We want to make sure that there's places for the Mac Admins in it, and that you have the skills that you need to advance your career for the long term, and that you have the ability to do that kind of networking here, in Slack, at other conferences, in other places, in the community groups that we see out there in the world. One of the other programs that we are working to launch, hopefully later this year, is going to be a community organizer toolkit. So that if there's no Mac Admins group where you are, maybe there ought to be. Maybe you can help with that. Maybe we can give you some tools on how to do that and do that well and easily. And make friends with the other nearby meetup groups, and then you can save resources, and maybe you don't meet every month, but you can attend virtually at other places. So those are the other things that we're trying to do, is build a future.
And also, I've had people come up to me and talk about how else they can be involved, and we have committees.
Yes.
You could be involved in committees. It doesn't have to be monetary support. So
correct.
Talk to us about that as well.
That's right. You do not need to be a board member to serve on a committee. In fact, we need more committee members because the board members we have now need to serve on 3 or 4 committees to make them function. So, where is the catch box? Can we have the catch box for Rich here?
Having served as a former admin for the Slack and as a former board member, all this takes a lot of personal time. And the more people that we can get to divide the load, the better off everyone is, frankly.
Many hands make light work.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah, this is definitely something where, we didn't get into this because it was easy. It was because we thought it would be easy, and it is not. And the reason I had to roll out of both being a Slack admin and being a board member is I could not devote the time to it anymore. But for those who do have that time, who do have that energy, please do help out.
Sorry.
It's okay.
It needs to make a sound or something as
Yeah.
it's going through the air, just so you get like a.
Heads up.
I guess we need to say flag.
I have a few questions, and I might bring some of them up after. Your last comment about board, or not board positions, but committee positions. Is there a list of committees that you are currently either recruiting for or need more member?
All of them.
Okay. Is there a list of
yes,
all of the
Okay,
committees?
yeah, but
I'm making
yeah.
a joke first. But I was going to say we have a finance committee, which is responsible for the good working order of our financial system, including bank statements and working with our accountants.
So money people?
I'm sorry?
The money people?
The money people, yeah. Well,
place that you could put a list of committees.
you would be shocked to learn that there is one. And so, yeah, I was going to say it's on our website. It's in the channel. But we have a fundraising committee as well, which is responsible for the membership program as well as our corporate giving programs. We have a committee for conference and community events, including the scholarships. Chris, I'm missing one.
We also have the executive committee. We have the mentorship committee.
Correct.
We also have working groups that we haven't assigned the name committee to yet. We have a group that is just bootstrapped that I think we're calling the Regional Events Committee, that's tailored towards helping
those meetup
particularly
groups
in post-pandemic, although post-pandemic is arguable. Resurrecting in-person meetups is something that kind of disappeared, particularly in the 2020-2021 timeframe. I'm a longtime maintainer of the Apple Admins of Seattle meetup group, and we have so far not successfully resurrected in-person meetups. And so we've built a team consisting of both regional meetup maintainers and a couple of our board members to try to figure out how to build a kit to start doing that again. And there goes my water. And then I think we have worked a little bit with the Slack admins team on a process of figuring out how to sort of have it's an admin task force to help the admins become more experienced in community moderation. We're looking at providing them training. Things like how do they go about governing the instance? How do they go about changing the code of conduct and the rules? And how do they get input from the community to do that? Those are kind of the teams that we have working now.
And we just need more admins. I mean, if you want to moderate the community, please volunteer. We could use you.
You said you had other questions?
I have one more little pin to pull and throw.
Good.
Does the board, as represented here, have any comments or follow-up on the discussion regarding the Microsoft Mac Admins LinkedIn community?
The Microsoft Mac Admins LinkedIn community continues to be a product on LinkedIn. That's really all we can say. We've had some really great conversations with the team at Microsoft. They are aware of us. We have conversations with them coming up very soon. But I don't think we're going to ask them to move to us. I mean,
No,
we're where the people are. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I didn't.
But-
I didn't expect to hear.
Yeah.
We are declaring victory.
Yes.
but the conversations continue. Thank
I
you.
mean, honestly, they are welcome to do what they think is best for their organization, and they think that what's best for their organization is a LinkedIn group right now. And we support that. I'm a member of that community.
Yeah, and it's also the case from the I think my standpoint as a board member, speaking as myself, that if you look at the larger industry, most vendors have their own community forums, have environments that they maintain for their user base or their administrator base, with a focus on providing an environment that is, for better or worse, under that vendor's control or under that vendor's influence. And I don't think that we necessarily want to insist that we should be the only venue for vendors to talk to their customers, constituents, whatever term we want to use. What I do want to assert and what I want to continue to work for is an independent venue that is free of the control of any particular party.
I think that I balance that also with it saying that it's a respectful professional community that can come together and be a good place for public conversation.
Yeah, my comment may be being misconstrued. I'm not saying that it's not a thing that should exist, so much as the naming confusion for people, say, on LinkedIn that are looking for Mac admins. And finding the foundation and finding Microsoft's Mac admins.
I will point out that we are the Mac Admins Foundation. The conference that we are at is the Mac Admins Conference, capped and spaced differently at Penn State University. There is also the Mac Admins podcast, which belongs to neither of those corporate entities. I will say we are maybe not great at naming things.
Yeah, it's just possible that that's true.
We do share a common interest. And I mean, and I think that that is the thing that we can say. If you're searching for, the Microsoft, if you're searching for Mac admins on LinkedIn and you end up in Microsoft's community, great, that's a gateway drug to what you really want, which is more Mac admins. So honestly, any entry into this community is a good one. In fact, it's a great one. Wherever you start, that is where you start. What did we learn in Pam's session? Begin where you are.
Heads up.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, there's lots of things in our community named Mac admins, and honestly, I think that's fine. If you look out on LinkedIn, there's a Mac admins India community that uses that symbol as their symbol. That's not a problem.
Yep.
We don't own that, and I think it's better to have these various communities. Yeah, we're going to have a bit of confusion, but I think it's better that, at least when people say Mac admins, they know the community. Not, it's a unifying thing. It's not a dividing thing.
Correct.
Confusing perhaps sometimes.
Yes.
But unifying.
That's right.
Bring it back to the trying to resurrect the local meetup scene.
Sure.
So Twin Cities Mac admins, which I'm not a member of the steering committee anymore, but they've been trying, and meetups are hard. Tangentially, I also tried to help restart Serverless Minnesota, and we got 1 or 2 meetings in, and then it fizzled out as well. Twin Cities Mac admins mostly is just doing happy hour meetups. One thing that I think is, I'm actually curious about the perceptions of this room. For some of us, it turns out there's a lot of red tape with our employers nowadays to get allowance to use meeting space for community events and meetups. And the only other options are perhaps happy hour scenes, which I'm not sure is always appropriate. Renting rooms the ability to maybe rent rooms at locations that are accessible to all parties within an area would be nice, but that also takes money.
Well, and I was going to say, these are things that we've been thinking about. And, if those requests start to come in from more of our meetup groups, we'll consider them on case-by-case basis in terms of, because that's a funding of the community. at that point. What we've got to figure out is what the rules are and what our liability insurance will allow us to do.
Yeah, I would go so far as to say we would consider looking at that as some kind of support program at some point, to consider extending financial support to organizations like that, but we haven't gotten that far yet. And to your point, we've experienced a lot of the same thing in Seattle. We see problems gaining access to offices. We see another issue is that so many of our participants have moved to remote first employment, which means that in our particular case, even if we got an office in downtown Seattle to schedule, everybody's at home.
Yep.
All of it, we used to exist in a world where people wanted to knock off at 3:30 on Thursday in order to come to a meetup in the middle of downtown Seattle. But now knocking off at 3:30 on Thursday means you're at home starting dinner early. And so the dynamic is different. And we're still working on those dynamics and figuring that out. We've kind of had that conversation. Should we move to Saturdays? Is that work better for people who are working from home? What else might work?
And I think like in our case, those meetups that do happen, which never have a presentation just because there's no venue appropriate for it, those are outside the downtown area where it's more accessible after hours because nobody wants to drive into downtown if they're not already there.
Sure.
Yep.
See, I was responsible for trying to get IT admins, not just Mac admins, but IT admins together in a bunch of different cities, and Pam knows this. It was really difficult to get people out, especially in larger cities because different regions of the city. So that has been a problem for the last 3 years, post-pandemic. So totally hear you. What worked pre-pandemic doesn't work now. So we've just got to figure out a different way to do it. And we've got people in more rural areas who are just trying to find people near them at all that work on Macs and things. So it's going to be a process,
It's going to be a process. And, we just met a bunch, there were 6 of us from DC that just met over in the Senate suite. And we're like, okay, fine. What we did in the room was we set a date and time for a Zoom at the end of the month. July 31st, 5 p.m. We'll publish in the Slack so folks who aren't in DC can come too. But the whole idea here is that we set up these groups and we get started, we do something. It doesn't have to be the same thing every time.
Marcus.
And I think that the sort of discussions we're having here, I think, are going to be instrumental to that.
Yes.
Is rather than these groups trying to work out on their own what might work and what might not work, is actually talk to other people who are doing this and finding out what's working, finding out the things they did that made it easier, finding out the things they did that
hence the task force that we just stood up.
And I think Philly is a good example, starting with someplace like that is doing it and then going from there.
Another thing that I think is really good is the idea of allowing these to be individual groups as well. I know over the years many people have tried to centralise the meetup thing, and it's
that's for a longer discussion, gets us way into the weeds, but broadly I agree with you.
So it was a year ago where I was sitting in a session just like this where I decided to start the Hoosier Mac Admins in Indiana. Talk with Chris, and I am a part of that steering committee, whatever it is, the channel and Slack and all that, to discuss how the Mac Admins Foundation can support starting up new groups, supporting existing groups, things like that. And so a lot of the discussions that have been happening in here are happening, and there are people on it to kind of see the best way that the community can be helped. So
absolutely. Yeah. And thank you for doing that, by the way. And I was really psyched to see that you guys do also online, so folks can attend from anywhere. That's the other thing, is if there's not a meetup group in your location, you can go visit others to get great ideas to then start your own.
So we have kind of gotten sort of into the weeds on the local meetups. We may bring this back to more general questions. I don't know. I think we're basically done.
We're basically done at this point. So we're in Q&A land.
We
Obviously,
drifted into Q&A land.
Our lovely bonfire store. Get cool merch. So.
All right, so I know we're close on
Yeah,
time.
we got 7 minutes. We got plenty of time for Q&A.
For those of us that applied to be mentor,
Yes.
what is the time frame on that? How is that process?
So I was going to say there's going to be a round of communications that go out next week. Obviously, being here affected our ability to send those out. So there will be a second round of communications that come out from the team this coming week. And we hope to get started by the end of July. For mentors, there's less to do because you will be, essentially your mentee picks you, as we discussed in the earlier part of the session. So, and then we'll get started, we'll go through October, and then we'll all learn together about how the program worked. Go ahead.
May I ask that everybody who's organizing a meetup use MacAdmins, no spaces, no apostrophe as a keyword? Because I've tried finding groups in other cities when I've traveled around, and it becomes a guessing game of what keywords are they listed under?
Sure.
So I'm going to answer that. You can ask.
Yeah. Organizations every community picks something different, and I know that keywords are helpful, and I hear that.
What I'm saying is, if y'all put up some note somewhere saying, "Hey guys, why don't we all do this?" and just have it as a little footnote on one of your web pages.
Obviously, making sure that people are findable is a big part of the kit that we're going to be providing for folks. Can we?
You just volunteer to write the regex.
Yeah. We got 5 minutes.
Not every meetup group limits themselves to just Macs for Apple devices as well. So keep that in mind.
It's tough, but we're going to do our best. I will point people at the Meetups channel in the MacAdmin Slack. That is a great place to see where things are happening. Active groups publish there. And so that's a great way to think about it. Other questions, concerns? One towards the back, James?
I just wanted to say, like, for having meetups, it's like a really good idea to have like a regular cadence.
Yes.
And, have like monthly virtual meetups, and then maybe try quarterly in-person meetups as something to like start with. That's reasonable and attainable. But you also don't necessarily want to start with an in-person meetup and have no one show up, and that's kind of depressing.
So yeah, strong way to start is virtually, and then build yourself towards a cadence where there's relationships that have been built up, and then you can all get together. I think the Philly model is really, really solid.
And if you eventually get to the point where you can have monthly in-person meetups and have a good showing, then great. But don't try to start that way, because that's not really reasonable.
Correct.
It's like football. There is a meetups channel on the Slack instance. I think that would be a great place for everybody thinking about starting a meetup or looking for one to post the information.
Yep. Bryson.
So I'm actually a little bit out of touch here, so maybe I can get corrected. When we're talking about virtual meetups, a lot of things I've seen in the past is that someone is writing off their employer's Zoom account in order to make that magic happen.
Yep.
Can you get away with free accounts, or do you need a paid one in order to facilitate those?
It comes down to time more than anything else. Like a Google Meet is free up to an hour with a Gmail account. So I mean, I was going to say that will, and with up to, I think, 50 people.
Zoom is 40 minutes max with like 3 or more people in it.
Yeah, so I was going to say there are some free tools that are there. Obviously, if you're having trouble finding an account, I've got one for macadmins.org. And so I was going to say, invite me to your meeting. I will take over and be the host, and then disappear off and do other things, and then you can have the meeting without me. So please come see me if you're having trouble making that work.
Pro tip.
Pro tip.
Also record them.
No. So here's my thought on that. So here. Obviously, I think that takes things to it. The statement was, and record them also. And I think that there's a time and a place for that. And the time and the place for that, it comes down to like a presentation that you're doing on a specific knowledge topic for the period of only that presentation, and to go from there. I think that really helps. I know that that's helpful for organizations to build a record and to build those kind of things, but it also comes with there are some folks who are just going to go camera off at that point. They're going to mute their mic. They're never going to talk. They don't want to be recorded. And that boxes people out of your environment. So we want to make sure that we're doing things that make sense for the community. And only if you really, really need it should you record it.
Yeah, that was a very emphatic no from everyone.
Well, and I think that it's going to come down to what is the need and what is the preference of your
Yes.
organization that you're building. But some kind of default recommendation is going to be something that clearly isn't going to go over well for everybody.
We had that experience. Some people asked if we could record a meeting so they could watch it later. And I hit the record button and 3 people vanished and never came back.
Yeah.
I mean, they just said, we're not going to do this if you're going to record. They just,
Yep.
and we never saw them again.
And let me ask this, is Philly in the room at all?
Yeah.
I see.
Y'all
I
are
see
here.
some folks.
I've participated in the Zoom meetups with Philly a few times, and my recollection is that there is a partial recording and then there is a going off record portion of the meetup. And so there are a lot of different ways to solve this problem or provide something along the lines of kind of a formal record, particularly if you're doing technical presentations and actual updates with Apple. On the other hand, if it's just a bunch of people getting together to have a beer together over Zoom, that's a different case.
Yep. We are at the end of our session. As always, we deeply appreciate you. We have channels on the Slack. The Mac and Men's Foundation channel is there. I also want to give a huge shout out to all of our sponsors who make this possible. So thank you so much to our sponsorship organization, and we look forward to thanking our new members at this conference next year. Thank you, friends.
We'll see y'all on Slack.
Yeah.